July 28, 1945, Captain Charles Butler McVeigh III stood on the bridge of USS Indianapolis at Opera Harbor, Guam, preparing to depart on a routine training mission. McVeigh was 46 years old, third-generation Navy, Naval Academy class of 1920. His father had been an admiral. His grandfather had served in the Civil War. By July 1945, McVeigh had commanded Indianapolis through multiple campaigns in the Pacific. He knew his ship, he knew his crew. The ship was USS Indianapolis, hull number CA-35, a Portland-class heavy cruiser, built in 1931, 6 and 10 feet long, 9,150 tons displacement, 9 8-inch guns, 8 5-inch anti-aircraft guns, top speed 32 knots. She had earned 10 battle stars. She had been Admiral Spruance's flagship. She had bombarded Japanese positions at Iwo Jima and Okinawa. But what nobody on that bridge knew, what Captain McVeigh did not know, what most of the 1,196 men aboard did not know, was that USS Indianapolis had just completed the most important mission of World War II. 10 days earlier, she had delivered the uranium core for Little Boy, the atomic bomb that would be dropped on Hiroshima in 9 days. And in 48 hours, USS Indianapolis would be at the bottom of the Philippine Sea. 900 men would be in the water. No lifeboats, no food, no water, no rescue. 4 days later, only 316 would still be alive. This is the story of the worst naval disaster in United States history. On July 16, 1945, USS Indianapolis departed San Francisco, carrying cargo that nobody aboard could identify. 2 Army officers came aboard with a large crate. The crate was welded to the deck in the flag lieutenant's cabin. Armed guards stood watch 24 hours a day. Nobody was allowed near it. The crew speculated. Some thought it was gold for General MacArthur. Others guessed new radar equipment. A few joked it was toilet paper for Admiral Nimitz. Nobody guessed it was the core of an atomic weapon. Captain McVeigh had orders to proceed at maximum speed to Tinian Island in the Marianas. He was told the cargo was critical to ending the war. He was told every day saved would save American lives. He was not told what the cargo actually was. Indianapolis set a speed record to Pearl Harbor, 2,091 miles in 74.5 hours, average speed 28 knots, refueled in 10 hours, and continued to Tinian. The entire trip from San Francisco to Tinian took 10 days. Normal convoy speed would have required 3 weeks. On July 26th, Indianapolis arrived at Tinian. The crate was offloaded under heavy security. The 2 Army officers disappeared. The crew never learned what they had been carrying until after Hiroshima was destroyed on August 6th. From Tinian, Indianapolis sailed to Guam. Captain McVeigh requested training time for his crew. Many were replacements who had joined after the ship's last refit. They needed gunnery practice, damage control drills, combat exercises. The Navy had other plans. Indianapolis was ordered to Leyte in the Philippines to join Vice Admiral Jesse Oldendorf's task force preparing for the invasion of Japan. Departure date, July 28th. Route, direct course across the Philippine Sea. Estimated arrival, July 31st. Nobody told Captain McVeigh that Japanese submarine I-58 was operating somewhere along his route. USS Indianapolis departed Guam at 09 SOR hours on July 28, 1945. Clear skies, calm seas. The ship was sailing alone, no escort vessels. Standard operating procedure in July 1945. The Japanese Navy was beaten. Submarine attacks had become rare. Most merchant ships sailed unescorted. Combat vessels certainly didn't need protection. Captain McVeigh had been issued routing orders. He was to proceed independently to Leyte. He was authorized to zigzag at his discretion, weather permitting. Zigzagging was a standard anti-submarine tactic. changing course every few minutes to make it harder for submarines to calculate firing solutions. The problem was that the intelligence briefing at Guam had been incomplete. The port director told McVeigh that submarine contacts along his route were low risk. He was not told that I-58 had been sighted in the area days earlier. That information existed, but it never reached McVeigh. Indianapolis had no sonar. She would depend on lookouts and radar to detect periscopes. She was scheduled to arrive at Leyte on the morning of July 31st, but no one at Leyte was specifically expecting her. The routing office at Guam had sent a message stating Indianapolis would arrive, but arrival messages were routine and often ignored if ships were delayed. For the first 36 hours, the voyage was uneventful. The ship maintained 15.7 knots, a moderate cruising speed that balanced fuel economy with schedule. The weather was good. Visibility was excellent during the day. McVeigh ordered the standard watch routine, 1/3 of the crew on duty, 2/3 resting. By the evening of July 29th, Indianapolis was approximately 300 miles southwest of Guam, crossing the Philippine Sea. The sky was overcast, visibility was poor, seas were moderate. At 20:30 hours, McVeigh gave the order to cease zigzagging, standard procedure in poor visibility. Zigzagging in darkness with limited visibility increased the risk of collision if other ships were in the area. The standing order was to resume zigzagging at dawn. Nobody on USS Indianapolis knew that Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto and the crew of I-58 had spotted them. Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto was 36 years old in July 1945. He had graduated from the Japanese Naval Academy in 1931, the same class as future post-war Prime Minister Nakasone. He took command of I-58 in September 1944. I-58 was a Type B-3 submarine, 356 feet long, displacing 2,600 tons submerged. She carried 19 torpedoes and had a crew of 94 men. She was on her 5th war patrol. By July 1945, Japanese submarine operations were becoming desperate. Fuel was scarce. Spare parts were unavailable. Experienced crews had been killed. Most Japanese submarines were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. I-58 had departed Kure on July 18th with orders to attack American shipping lanes between Guam and Leyte. Hashimoto had spent 10 days patrolling without finding any targets. He was conserving fuel, running submerged during the day, surfacing at night to recharge batteries. On the night of July 29th, I-58 was running on the surface. The diesels were charging the batteries. Lookouts were scanning the horizon. At 2309 hours, a lookout spotted something on the horizon, a dark shape against the clouds. Hashimoto studied it through binoculars. Large ship, single funnel, heavy cruiser, no escorts, not zigzagging, steaming at moderate speed on a straight course. Hashimoto ordered battle stations. I-58 submerged and began maneuvering into attack position. The target was USS Indianapolis. At 23:30 hours on July 29, 1945, I-58 was at periscope depth, tracking Indianapolis. Hashimoto watched through the periscope as the cruiser approached. Range closing, 1,500 meters, 1,000 meters, 800 meters. The cruiser was not zigzagging. She was maintaining a straight course at steady speed. Perfect target. Hashimoto calculated the firing solution. He armed 6 Type 95 torpedoes. These were the most advanced torpedoes in the Japanese arsenal, oxygen-fueled, wakeless, deadly. At 23:35 hours, Hashimoto gave the order. I-58 fired a spread of 6 torpedoes at 500-meter intervals. On USS Indianapolis, most of the crew was asleep. The midwatch had just taken over. Lookouts scanned the dark ocean. Radar operators watched their screens. everything was routine. At 00:05 hours on July 30th, 1945, the first torpedo struck Indianapolis on the starboard bow. The explosion was massive. The blast destroyed the forward 40 feet of the ship, including turret number 1, the chain locker, and forward crew berthing. Fuel oil ignited. Men sleeping in the forward compartments were killed instantly or trapped by twisted metal and rising water. 12 seconds later, the second torpedo hit amidships just forward of the bridge. This explosion was even more catastrophic. The torpedo struck the fuel tanks and ammunition magazine. The blast destroyed the ship's communication systems, knocked out electrical power, and damaged the engine rooms. 4 of the 6 torpedoes had missed. 2 hits were enough. Indianapolis lurched violently to starboard. The list increased rapidly. Water poured into the hull through gaping holes. Steam from broken pipes filled compartments. Fires raged in the wreckage. Captain McVeigh had been thrown from his bed by the first explosion. He reached the bridge within seconds. The damage reports were immediate and devastating. No power, no communications, no propulsion. The bow was gone. The ship was listing 15 degrees and increasing. At 00:08 hours, McVeigh gave the order to abandon ship. The problem was that most of the crew had no way to know the order had been given. The communication systems were destroyed. The public address system was dead. Officers and petty officers tried to pass the word verbally, running through the dark, smoke-filled passageways, but many compartments never received the message. At 00:12 hours, Indianapolis rolled over. Her stern rose into the air. Men were still climbing out of hatches. Men were sliding down the hull into the water. Men were jumping. Men were trapped inside. At 00:20 hours, USS Indianapolis sank. 12 minutes from first torpedo impact to total loss. Approximately 300 men went down with the ship. 900 men were in the water. The survivors of USS Indianapolis found themselves scattered across several square miles of ocean. It was dark. The sea was warm, around 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Many men had life jackets. Some had grabbed life rafts as they abandoned ship. Most had nothing but their clothing. The ship had sunk so quickly that only a few lifeboats had been launched. Most of the life rafts were still secured on deck when Indianapolis went down. Some flotsam came to the surface, wooden planks, cork floats, empty shell casings, debris. Men grabbed anything that floated. By dawn on July 30th, the survivors had organized into groups. Some groups had life rafts with supplies, food rations, water, first aid kits. Most groups had nothing. The groups drifted apart. Strong currents and winds scattered them across an area more than 20 miles wide. The sun rose. The temperature climbed. The ocean, which had seemed warm during the night, became a torture chamber. Direct sunlight reflecting off the water caused snow blindness. Dehydration set in within hours. Men started drinking seawater. Saltwater poisoning caused hallucinations. The first man died on Monday morning. Injuries from the explosions, internal bleeding, shock. By Monday afternoon, dozens more were dead. Bodies floated among the living. Then the sharks arrived. The sharks were oceanic whitetips, aggressive open ocean predators that follow ships and feed on garbage thrown overboard. They had probably been following Indianapolis for days. When the ship sank, hundreds of bodies went into the water. The sharks fed. By Monday evening, the sharks had finished with the dead and began attacking the living. Men felt something bump them from below. A tug on a leg, a strike, screaming, blood in the water, more sharks. The attacks continued for 4 days. Men died from exposure. Men died from dehydration. Men died from drinking seawater and going insane. Men died from giving up hope. Men died from shark attacks. The groups grew smaller. Nobody was searching for them. Nobody knew Indianapolis had sunk. USS Indianapolis was supposed to arrive at Leyte on Tuesday morning, July 31st. She did not arrive. Nobody noticed. The port director's office at Tacloban, Leyte, had received the message that Indianapolis would arrive on the 31st, but the message was routine and arrival times were often approximate. Ships were frequently delayed by weather, mechanical problems, or routing changes. Standing orders stated that if a ship did not arrive on schedule, no action would be taken unless the ship was overdue by more than 48 hours. Vice Admiral Jesse Oldendorf's staff expected Indianapolis to report for duty, but they did not have a specific arrival time. When she failed to appear on July 31st, they assumed she had been delayed. No one sent a message to Guam asking for her location. The commander of the Philippine Sea frontier, responsible for routing ships in the area, had a plot of all ship movements. Indianapolis was marked as en route from Guam to Leyte. When she failed to arrive on the 31st, someone should have updated the plot. Nobody did. The Combat Intelligence Unit at Guam had decoded Japanese radio transmissions on July 30th, indicating that I-58 had attacked and sunk a large warship. The intelligence was filed but not distributed. Nobody at Guam connected the Japanese report with Indianapolis's failure to arrive at Leyte. For 3 days, USS Indianapolis was missing, and nobody in the United States Navy realized it. 900 men were dying in the Philippine Sea, and nobody was looking for them. At 10:25 hours on Thursday, August 2nd, Lieutenant Wilbur Gwynn was flying a routine anti-submarine patrol in a PV-1 Ventura bomber. He was 200 miles north of Peleliu, flying at 3,000 feet. Gwynn spotted an oil slick on the surface. Oil slicks often indicated submarine activity. He descended to investigate. At 500 feet, he saw something that made no sense. Men, dozens of men, in the water, waving. Gwynn circled lower. He could see more men, small groups scattered over miles of ocean. Some were in life rafts. Most were just floating with life jackets. They were waving frantically. Gwynn radioed his base. Many men in water need emergency rescue. The message reached fleet headquarters. Within minutes, every available aircraft and ship in the area was racing toward the coordinates. But it would take hours for the ships to arrive. The men had been in the water for 4 days. They were dying. At 14 hours, Lieutenant Adrian Marks arrived overhead in a PBY Catalina flying boat. He circled, assessing the situation. He could see men dying, sharks circling, men too weak to stay afloat. Marks made a decision that violated standing orders. He landed the PBY on the open ocean. The seas were rough, 12-foot swells. Landing a PBY in open ocean was dangerous. The aircraft could break apart. Marks didn't care. The PBY touched down. Marks taxied toward the nearest group of survivors. His crew pulled men aboard. They filled the aircraft. They lashed men to the wings. They kept pulling men out of the water until the PBY could barely float. 56 men were on or around that aircraft when it became too heavy to move. Marks radioed for help and stayed with the survivors until ships arrived. The first ship, USS Cecil J. Doyle, reached the area at 2345 hours on August 2nd. Other ships arrived throughout the night: USS Bassett, USS Dufilio, USS Talbot, USS Ringness. They searched until dawn, pulling survivors from the water. The rescue operations continued through August 3rd and into August 4th, search patterns covered 100 square miles. Aircraft searched during the day. Ships with searchlights searched at night. On August 8th, the rescue operations were terminated. 316 men had been saved. 879 men were dead or missing. USS Indianapolis had carried 1,296 men. Only 316 survived. The loss of Indianapolis became a political problem. The Navy had failed to detect the sinking. The rescue had been delayed. 900 men had been left to die. Somebody had to be held accountable. Captain Charles Butler McVeigh III was court-martialed in November 1945. The charges were failing to order abandoned ship in a timely manner and hazarding his ship by failing to zigzag. The first charge was dismissed. Testimony from survivors confirmed that McVeigh had given the order to abandon ship within minutes of the attack. The communication systems were destroyed, but McVeigh had acted properly. The second charge was controversial. McVeigh had ceased zigzagging because of poor visibility, which was within his discretion under standing orders. The weather had been overcast, exactly the conditions under which zigzagging was optional. The prosecution called Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto to testify. Hashimoto traveled from Japan to Washington. He testified that zigzagging would have made no difference. His torpedoes would have hit Indianapolis regardless. The court found McVeigh guilty of hazarding his ship. The sentence was a letter of reprimand and loss of seniority. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz and Admiral Raymond Spruance both recommended clemency. Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal reduced the punishment, but the conviction remained on McVeigh's record. McVeigh never recovered from the conviction. He received hate mail from families of the dead. Anonymous letters accused him of cowardice. Obscene phone calls came to his home. The survivors publicly defended him, but the public blamed him. McVeigh retired from the Navy in 1949 as a rear admiral. He moved to Connecticut. He lived quietly. On November 6, 1968, at age 70, Charles Butler McVeigh III committed suicide. He used his Navy service revolver. His body was found on his front lawn holding a toy sailor he had received as a child. The survivors of Indianapolis never stopped fighting to clear McVeigh's name. For decades, they campaigned for his exoneration. They wrote letters to Congress. They collected signatures. They testified before committees. In 1996, sixth-grade student Hunter Scott began a history project on Indianapolis. His research revealed the failures that led to the disaster: failures in intelligence, failures in routing, failures in reporting. McVeigh had been scapegoated. Scott's project generated national attention. The survivors renewed their campaign. In 2000, Congress passed a resolution exonerating McVeigh. The resolution stated that McVeigh's record should reflect that he was exonerated for the loss of USS Indianapolis. President Bill Clinton signed it into law, but the resolution was symbolic. The court-martial conviction remained in McVeigh's official Navy record. The Navy refused to remove it. Legal authorities stated that Congress could not overturn a military court-martial. In July 2001, the Navy issued a statement. The Secretary of the Navy ordered McVeigh's service record amended to reflect the congressional resolution. The conviction remained, but the record now stated that McVeigh's failure to zigzag was not the cause of Indianapolis's loss. It was too late for McVeigh. He had been dead for 33 years. Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto survived the war. I-58 returned to Japan on August 15, 1945, the day Japan surrendered. Hashimoto was never prosecuted for war crimes. He had followed the laws of naval warfare. After the war, Hashimoto became a Shinto priest. He wrote his memoirs in 1954, published in Japan as Sunk. In the book, he described the attack on Indianapolis as routine. He had been hunting targets. Indianapolis had appeared. He had fired torpedoes. The ship sank. Mission accomplished. Hashimoto expressed no remorse. He had been doing his duty. The Americans had been his enemies. They had died. That was war. In 1990, Hashimoto attended a reunion of Indianapolis survivors in Indianapolis, Indiana. He met some of the men whose shipmates he had killed. He shook hands with them. He stated that he respected their courage. Hashimoto lived to age 91. He died on October 25, 2000, 3 months after Congress exonerated Captain McVeigh. Japanese newspapers published obituaries calling him a naval hero. USS Indianapolis remained lost for 72 years. Her exact sinking position was uncertain. Survivors had been scattered over dozens of miles. The Navy's best estimate was approximate. Over the decades, several attempts were made to locate the wreck. All failed. The Philippine Sea is deep, over 18,000 feet in some areas. The search area was vast. The technology was insufficient. In August 2017, a civilian research team led by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen began a new search. The team used autonomous underwater vehicles with advanced sonar. They searched the area where survivors had been found in 1945, working backward to estimate where the ship had sunk. On August 19, 2017, 72 years and 20 days after Indianapolis went down, the research team found the wreck. The ship was 18,000 feet below the surface, sitting upright on the seafloor. The bow was missing. The damage from the torpedo hits was clearly visible. The wreckage field spread over several hundred yards. The discovery was announced globally. News organizations published photographs of the wreck, the anchor, the propellers, gun mounts, pieces of hull plating. The U.S. Navy issued a statement declaring USS Indianapolis a war grave. The wreck site is protected under U.S. and international law. No salvage is permitted. No artifacts may be removed. The ship is the final resting place of the men who went down with her. Only 5 survivors were still alive when the wreck was found. They issued a statement thanking the search team. They said their shipmates could finally rest in peace. USS Indianapolis was lost because of failures at every level. Intelligence failures, communication failures, routing failures, reporting failures. Nobody intended for 1,196 men to sail into danger. Nobody deliberately failed to rescue 900 men from the water, but the system broke down. The Navy learned. After Indianapolis, new procedures were implemented. Ships were required to report their positions daily. Port directors were required to track all vessels and report any overdue arrivals within 12 hours. Intelligence on enemy submarine activity was distributed more widely. Life-saving equipment was improved, more life rafts, better emergency rations, radio beacons, shark repellent. Survival training became mandatory. None of these improvements brought back the 879 men who died, but they probably saved thousands of lives in future decades. The story of USS Indianapolis matters because it reveals how organizations fail, not through malice, not through incompetence, but through assumptions, complacency, and the belief that procedures will work without verification. Indianapolis was supposed to arrive at Leyte. Nobody verified her arrival because procedure said ships would report problems if they occurred, but Indianapolis couldn't report problems because her communication systems were destroyed. Procedure failed. 879 men died. As of November 2024, only one survivor remains alive, Harold Bray, fireman second class, age 96. He was 18 years old when Indianapolis sank. He spent 4 days in the water. He watched his friends die. He was rescued on August 3, 1945. After the war, Bray became a police officer. He served 30 years. He attended every Indianapolis survivor reunion. He told his story to school groups and historians. He fought to clear Captain McVeigh's name. The other 315 survivors have passed away. The last reunion was held in 2013. By then, only a dozen survivors could attend. They were in their 80s and 90s. They remembered everything: the explosions, the fire, the water, the sharks, the screaming, the dying. They remembered their shipmates who didn't make it. 879 names, 879 men who should have lived, men who delivered the atomic bomb that ended the war, men who died because nobody was watching for them. If you found this story meaningful, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We work hard to bring you forgotten stories from World War II, the stories that textbooks skip, the missions that official histories ignore, the ships and sailors who served and died without recognition. USS Indianapolis completed the most important delivery mission of World War II. She carried the uranium core for the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. That bomb ended the war. It saved hundreds of thousands of American lives that would have been lost in the invasion of Japan. 10 days after delivering that cargo, Indianapolis and most of her crew were gone. 879 men died. They died after the mission was complete. They died when the war was nearly over. They died because the system failed. Their sacrifice mattered. The improvements made after Indianapolis saved countless lives. The procedures changed. The Navy learned. But 879 men still died in the Philippine Sea in July and August 1945. Their names are carved on the wall of the missing at the Manila American Cemetery. Their bodies were never recovered. They rest somewhere in 18,000 feet of water, still aboard USS Indianapolis. We should remember them. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Our community includes history enthusiasts from every corner of the world, and we appreciate every single one of you.